minus 20 and counting. T minus 15 and counting.
I'm just gonna start now. Actually, sorry, Greg. Just
Yeah,
skip to
okay.
one. Anyways, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 52 of the Core Developer Meetings. I'm Hudson, and let's get to the agenda. First, we're going to have a quick announcement about note taking and a Gitcoin bounty associated with it. So I'll have Lane go over that.
Awesome. Thank you, Hudson. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Cool. Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. Super excited to kick off this year, in fine health. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Anna, who's on the call. Hudson mentioned, I think our last meeting about a month ago, that we were kicking off an initiative to bring in some sort of external project management talent to help us just sort of run these meetings and just coordinate hard forks and things. Offrey's also kindly volunteered to help out with that process. And one of the things, so as you guys know, I've been taking notes for these calls for most of 2018. So we're gonna sort of experiment a bit going forward with that. So Anna has kindly offered to take notes for the meeting today. And the other piece of this is that we also set up a Gitcoin fund. So massive thank you to Gitcoin for helping us out with this and for funding the first bounty. And so there's actually going to be a bounty for note taking. This is something that we hope to keep doing for all of these calls, basically. So we may have some other fresh faces joining us to take notes going forward. Thank you.
Yep, exactly. And we also have Marat in here. He is also part of the group of people who are, it's kind of right now called like a project management group for the core devs, which is a group of about how many people? Something around 7 or 8 people who want to kind of learn how to navigate around either the EIPs or the core dev meetings or note take or help out in some way or another, maybe hard fork coordination, stuff like that. And Offrey is going to be leading the hard fork coordination path between now and the next hard or after Constantinople, but also I guess leading up to Constantinople. Usually that role was taken by either no one or kind of taken by me for previous hard forks, but he's stepped up to take that. So thank you so much, Offrey. And during calls for hard fork related stuff, I'll probably have Offrey cover a lot of that. So just a heads up to everybody. I think that's about it on that topic. Um, let's go ahead and start with testing updates. Is Dimitri in here? Yeah, Dimitri's in here. And let me mute my phone. Dimitri, if you want to go ahead,
Yeah.
take it away.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome. You're in 2019. Um, so tests. Focus on tests now. More move to validating the clients, how they pass existing tests generated by CPP client in a blockchain test form, and now we test those tests on Hive. Basically, it means we need to test Go client, Parity client, and any other Hive compatible clients. So far, I see only Go client is working on Hive. Hive been on a maintenance in the beginning of December, and I see now it works. Go client fails only 90 tests out of all of our test pool, and most of the failures are insignificant, either because of some configuration errors or maybe Hive script errors. And rest of the test, I will look at the failures and investigate why. And I need to contact with the developers because well, it would be nice to have like all tests passing without any issues. Well, interesting enough that ls client actually doesn't work on Hive. Although ls client did generate the test for Hive, it is being done with test it, and ls client work on Hive, failing mostly all of the tests because of configuration issues. Parity is still being integrated into the Hive. Well, I would like at least.
Yeah, so I fixed the parity errors last night, and
Oh,
complete now. So if you look at it sometime during this morning or afternoon, the latest results popped up for parity. It's at 23.
So 23 tests failing on parity?
Yeah, out of 21,000. And at least a couple of weeks ago, it was due to a crash in a theoretical case, which cannot happen on mainnet. And I believe the parity guys have fixed it, but I'm not sure if it's been merged.
Okay. So basically, we need at least 2 clients working on those tests, so we could compare results on the same test, but on a different clients. And if you have no issues, no serious issues, I think we are okay. I could say that we passed the test. So yes, this is what we are going to work on next week, making sure that every issue we see in Hive is not a major issue with the test, but rather than just configuration Hive scripts or some other test parsing issue maybe.
Okay. Is there any other testing updates from anybody? Okay. We can move on to client updates. Let's start with Geth. I think Peter's off right now, so maybe Martin or someone else on the Geth team.
Yeah, I was actually hoping Peter would be on. Yeah, I'll ping him and see if he can take the other clients before that.
Okay, sounds great. No problem. Parody, I think we have Offrey or Fred. No, just Offrey.
Yeah, it's just me today. So I'm just back from vacation, so I'm not entirely sure if I'm up to date with everything, but I can summarize some things we are working on right now. Of course, yeah, we are working on ProcPow. I think we are up to date with the current spec, and we are ready for the ProcPow testnet. We also started working, in addition to PWASM, on eWASM, with the goal eventually to join the eWASM testnet. Yeah, we also started working on implementing fast synchronization. We discussed this in previous meetings that we want to have something like a hybrid, fast warp synchronization in future, and implementing fast sync is one of the first steps for this. And last but not least, we started looking into removing accounts from Parity. In general, account management and transaction signings should not be part of the full client, of the full node implementation. And yeah, this is something we're trying to figure out how to transition best to. I guess that's it so far.
Okay, thank you. Nimbus.
Yep. Well, holidays, so not much progress to report, especially not on ETH1. Some good progress on ETH2. There's a blog post out for those that are interested. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Great. Aleph.
I don't have any update related to Constantinople, so yeah, nothing to report.
Okay. Pantheon. I think that'd be Dano or Meredith.
Yeah, not much to update here as people have been out for the holidays.
Okay. Is Mana here? Okay. What about? Wait, oh, TurboGeth.
Hello. So I was mostly working for last couple of weeks. I was mostly working on these the database that I mentioned on DEFCON 4, which I call Morus, which actually is a Latin name for mulberry. I didn't explain it very well there, but essentially I've been working on the most complex part of my proof of concept, which is the reverse diffs for the history. And I sort of made it work so far. So the reason why I'm doing this now is because it's going to be quite important for the TurboGets to support things like light clients and snapshot things, and it's also going to be part of things like Ethermint and things like this. And yeah, so that was my main focus for last 2 weeks.
Okay. Swarm with Adam.
Yes. So we were working on improving the stability. We found a skeleton in the cupboard, like the oldest part, which caused some stability problems, and we are working on fixing it. So we are expecting a stable swarm soon. That's it.
Okay. Ewasm. I think that's Lane, maybe.
Hello?
Oh, Alex, you're here. Never mind, it's Alex.
Hey, Hudson.
Hello.
We have a couple of things to report on. First of all, we focused quite a bit on the so-called ET1X working group, which proposes to introduce precompiles using EWASM onto the mainnet. And that proposal, which was made public like over a month ago, we proposed a couple of new precompiles. The good thing I can report is most of those we have implemented in Rust of the new proposed precompiles. And the reason we implemented them to have them benchmarked and to also run different metering strategies on them to come up with a good solution. So after we implemented them, we also focused on creating a benchmarking framework to benchmark all these precompiles. We haven't done benchmarking of every single one yet, but at least we have a framework which should allow benchmarking different implementations. The one we focused on is benchmarking different implementations of SHA-256 and running different metering strategies on them. So all of this can be found on the EWASM org on GitHub under the benchmarking repo. And the second focus area was the testnet, the public testnet we have. We worked quite a bit to improve the documentation. And the documentation covers things like how to use the testnet and how to compile and deploy contracts. And the second part is where we did a lot of improvements, and we should have much better description how to work with C or Rust contracts. We also have this other tool called the WASM Chisel, which can basically fix any kind of WASM binary to be compatible with EWASM. And that's coming to a release soon, and that should enable different languages to be used on the testnet. Last note on the testnet itself, so far the testnet was running with Ethereum and the C++ VM called Hera. But in the last couple of weeks, we also deployed a purely Go implementation called Wagon on the testnet. So we have two implementations of WebAssembly VMs running on the testnet for the last couple of weeks, and it was running without any issues. So I think that shows that it should be possible, what Afri mentioned, to have parity also join the testnet without any issues sometime in the future. The next thing I wanted to mention is we're working on surveys regarding blockchain platforms using WebAssembly. And the survey will look at how they use WebAssembly. Well, not only platforms which use WebAssembly, but also others which use some other VM similar or dissimilar to WebAssembly. But of course, the main focus is on WebAssembly itself. And we intend to include best practices we have found, and the survey should be published soon. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Ethereum J.
Hello. No features or something like that. We were working to pass all GitHub tests that were added by Dmitry and other contributors for Constantinople, and we did it. We have not found almost any bug, just one with precompiled modex. all other errors were only associated with tests, like one with empty storage, with empty account with storage. So we are passing all GitHub tests and we are ready for hard fork, but we are not running on Hive. We had issues with it and looks like they are not fixed. Need to check it. And that's all, I think.
Okay. Ethereum JS.
I can give a tiny update because Holger is not on the call, but I keep a close eye on Ethereum JS. And one important thing to note is at DEF CON, there was some discussion that maybe some parts should be rewritten in TypeScript. And that work has come to fruition. The first part is the RLP library, which has been rewritten to TypeScript, and that has been published before Christmas. And now work is being done on rewriting other libraries to TypeScript. The main benefit of that is it's going to be way more safer than what we had with JavaScript. I think that's the main update.
Cool. Trinity, are you here? Okay. And we'll go on. Did I miss any clients? I felt like I missed one, but I can't remember. All right, we can go back to it if I did. Research.
Hey. From our side, the ES research team, we've primarily been focusing on refining this phase 0 spec for Serenity, where phase 0 is the core proof of stake chain that is the backbone for all the shard chain. We are moving into a relatively stable place. We're still refining things, making optimizations, etc. But I will say, if you have not been following the progress on this side due to not having the time to dive into the weeds when things are constantly changing, sometime during January might be a good time to open up the spec and to provide insight into the things that you have expertise in. We're targeting something that looks relatively complete and production ready in terms of the spec by the end of January. Obviously, as we do implementations, things might change, bugs will be fixed, etc. But again, if you haven't opened that up, sometime over the next 2-3 weeks would be a good time to open it up and review and see what's going on over there. That's the main stuff from our side.
Okay, great. And EWASM? Or did we already do that?
We answered it. Yep.
Yep, we already went through that. Whoops. Okay, cool. I think that might be it for clients and research. Do we have any working group updates as far as White Block? I'm not sure. Is Zach here? Or someone who can speak on that? Or any of the other ones? I guess State Rent, if there's anything on that. Alexi's here.
Yeah, so I haven't written down the second version yet of the proposal, and I currently think that it will be in a very different format that the first one was. So essentially, the way I'm planning to do this is some kind of split it up into much smaller pieces, which I probably would call cards. So like you can probably describe one of them in one slide, and then instead of creating like sequential steps like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, essentially there would be some dependencies. And the reason I want to do this, so first of all, these cards will more or less correspond to the future EIPs. And the reason I want to do it is that I started to research the different alternative approaches, alternative proposals, or some kind of shorter term measures that we can deploy to sort of stem the state growth. And for example, one of them I've been researching is the is stem the state growth while increasing the block size limit. So I've written a small post about it on the Ethereum Magician. Essentially, the problem that I see is that if we are ready to raise the block gas limit, then problem with that would be that we would unleash the more rapid increase in the state size unless we simultaneously somehow restrict it. But the restricting it simply by making it more expensive has some side effects. So essentially, this post kind of goes over that we could, in a short term, decouple the block gas limit increase from the state rent, but it's not trivial. It requires some changes. For example, one of them would be something that Vitalik proposed to change the fee market. But anyway, so this is my current thinking, and so I'm probably going to do this around the next week. I know it's a bit short before our meeting in the end of January, but yeah, that's my update. And there's another post about the dark rent, which is an Vitalik suggested solution to, which is also an Ethereum Magician. So I think you can go to the keyword to the tags on the Ethereum Magician about the Ethereum 1x to find all these posts. There are not actually many of them. Basically, that's it for the state rent. And for the other working group, which is Peter leading. Peter, I'm not sure if he's going to join, but so for the cleaning up pruning the other types of information like blocks and receipts. So I also wrote up the proposal for the backwards forward sync, which came out of something different. But essentially, the idea is that you would, as a lot of clients do right now, you would do some sort of snapshot sync, either parity warp sync or fast sync, and then you instead of basically trying to reconstruct the prior history from the execution transactions, you simply download the prior history from the peer nodes as a reverse GIFs. So essentially, that if you kind of continue this, you probably can arrive to the situation where you don't actually need to store prior blocks at all. But yeah, so I probably will write a bit more about it, but maybe like in February or something. But that's all for me. Thank you.
Great. And you mentioned the meeting later this month. There is an very optional in-person meeting, January 26th through 28th, in the San Francisco Bay Area of the United States. It was discussed on a previous call, and also some people are on an email list for that. If you're not on the email list, reach out to me on Gitter and give me your email, and I will add you to the list if you're interested in possibly attending. We're also going to try to have remote options for parts of it, or if not as much of it as we can. I'm not primarily in charge of that. That's pretty much something that Consensus has graciously volunteered to kind of take on, and this stemmed from the ad hoc meetings at DevCon, I believe. So again, just reach out to me. And we don't have a specific venue yet, as far as I can tell, but that'll be coming up pretty soon. We'll have information on that, and send me your email if you're interested. It looks like, hey, Peter. Or actually, was there any questions about that before I start or throw it to Peter?
Oh, actually, can you just a very quick another update I forgot to say.
Sure.
I have found another person to help me with these tasks, and so he's going to join me in the end of January, and he's also going to be coming to that meeting as well to get introduced to other people. So I've been working with this person for a long time since in my 3 previous jobs. So I'm pretty kind of sort of relieved that there will be somebody helping me with that. So kind of full time. So yeah, that was another update.
Yes.
Awesome. Peter, do you want to give an update on Geth?
Yes, my vacation was great. So not really. I mean, I don't have any particular updates regarding forks or whatnot. One nice update is that about half a year ago, we were working on pruning, and we found there was some fault, and it took us an eternity to find it. And it turned out that it simply was not a fault, and everything is actually working. So now we have a fresh energy to actually do pruning properly again. So that's it. That's good news, but that's about it.
Okay, great. And good, we're on track here. Let's go ahead and go to the Constantinople hard fork. That is currently... Offrey, do you have the latest figures on when that's supposed to happen? I know you've been keeping up with that.
Yes. So let me check. I have a small script calculating the average block time and remaining blocks. And we are off by 10 minutes and 23 seconds after 12 p.m. UTC on Wednesday the 16th. That's we are very close to where we want to go with the hard fork.
Cool. So one potential concern is that according to a website and I guess back-end script running that Peter Pratcher set up from one of the major mining pools, only around 11% of the nodes are on the latest versions of Geth or Parity that are compatible with Constantinople. Is that a concern? And is that something that we should be proactive about as far as trying to get the messaging further? Does anyone have technical reasoning behind that? I'm not smart enough.
I have two comments regarding this. The first one would be a little bit out of scope for this call, but we usually used to have blog posts on Ethereum.org announcing hard forks. Maybe we should consider this. I don't know if anyone from the Ethereum Foundation wants to step up.
Oh yeah, I usually do that, and I forgot I do that, so I'll do that.
Yeah, maybe this will help with like spreading the word. And the other thing we already discussed this on Gitter. I think there are a lot of clients tracked by this fork monitor that are not on Ethereum because there are a lot of old versions that are not even updated to Byzantium yet, and I expect them not to run on Ethereum mainnet. So I personally don't think this is a major issue. But yeah, spreading the word is something we should do in the next 2 weeks.
Well, any other comments?
So I thought of something else. Is that so? I know that Parity, for example, supports usually at the kind of two versions: one of the stable ones and one of the the beta ones, and both of them are now Constantinople ready, as far as I understand. But but the other clients like Geth, as far as I understand, it only has one version which sort of supports the Constantinople. I wonder if this is might be the reason why you see like a slower adoption rate, slower upgrade rate for Geth, because people are usually very sort of reluctant to go to the beta straight away. So that was my thought when I looked at the stats.
We don't have. So in Geth, we kind of have two versions. One of them are the stable releases, which we kind of release every 2 weeks, and the other one is the nightly, so to say, unstable, but that is pretty much stable too. But both of them are and have been on Constantinople for a very long time.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. And the next item, or actually, I don't think there's any other stuff on Constantinople. We may have. The next meeting we're gonna have, it's gonna be post Constantinople, so we'll just go through what we usually do and talk in the core devs chat if there's gonna be any problems or anything we need to do.
Oh, actually, Hudson, maybe it makes sense to have like some kind of around the fork time. Maybe it makes sense to gather some like exceptional meeting or something. We're completely optional, but just to talk through what's going on if people want to do this sort of to monitor the transition. Or I don't know if it's helpful, because that actually kind of reaction time might be I don't know. Does it make sense to anybody?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
I can set up the call and have people who want to join, who are up at that time, can definitely join. And it'll be a party. So
Yeah.
we'll do that.
That's what I was going to say. Basically, the best case scenario is no news, and then we just celebrate.
Yep, totally. I'll pop a
We
beer.
can watch I don't know if I haven't mentioned it in the core dev call, but there's this forkmon.eastdevops.io where we can watch the fork happen.
Okay.
Well, actually, it would also be useful for people who are for people to join, who run some important services, to just get some real-time updates with some interpretation, rather than just sitting and watching at a fork monitor or something like this, because people have a different sources of information. So if we can just throw it in and sort of explain everything as it happens.
Okay, I can see if Infura and MyCrypto and others want to join. The people who run a lot of nodes. That could be cool. And if you have ideas for other groups, Alexi, just let me know and I can reach out to them.
Okay.
By the way, Martin, regarding the fork monitor, could you also add a pre-Constantinople node to it?
Yeah.
It would be nice to see what happens to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. What is next? I think we're gonna just have a overview from Ofri on the Istanbul hard fork that's going to be coming up after Constantinople, including a rough proposed roadmap and just some other things about that. So, Ofri, if you want to go over that.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about the stuff we had in mind for quite a while now. As far as I remember, we started thinking about this around Byzantium hard fork, to have a fixed hard fork schedule, to have protocol upgrades deployed on mainnet on a fixed schedule, like every 9 months or something like that. And I was running some numbers and proposing something I would just go through now. If we agree on this, we would have the next mainnet hard fork in October. This would be 9 months. I already saw there was some discussion to have it shorter, maybe 8 months or 6 months, or someone even proposed 3 months cycle. I don't think it should be too short, but yeah, we should discuss what a reasonable cycle would be. I was running numbers against the 9-month cycle, and this would mean we have the next hard fork, I called it Istanbul, next hard fork on 16th of October 2019. It's a Wednesday. This means we should have a testnet hard fork on Robson or any other suitable testnet around mid-August. If you want to follow this, I put the dates on the agenda in a comment. And most importantly, we should have a deadline to accept proposals that go into this hard fork around mid-May. So we have around 5 months to properly implement and test all the protocol upgrades. That's so far the roadmap. Action items. So we should have decide now, do we want this? We should decide what's the reasonable timeline. I'm personally in favor of having 9 months. And yes. Any comments so far?
And that timeline was for which part?
Sorry, could you repeat this?
Yeah, that timeline was for the amount of length between today and the next hard fork, right?
Exactly. The time from Constantinople to Istanbul is exactly 9 months.
I see.
Didn't we want to get Prague POW in before that, if possible?
So, yeah, I guess we haven't really decided about Prog POW, and that's so. I mean, tentatively, I kind of agree that it's sensible to have scheduled work every 9 months, but yeah, I also believe that we should roll out Prog POW, and I kind of feel that we should have a discussion about that.
Yeah, I'm
Not
seeing.
necessarily in this context.
Yeah, that was actually the next item, but we can kind of start talking about that a little bit. Um, and I'm kind of hearing two sides. One of them is that we should have the Prog POW fork, if we're going to have it at all, before 9 months, maybe sometime in between there. Um, the other um, the other point of view is that we should have it at 9 months and bundle it with a bunch of other updates. So I'm starting to read your notes on the agenda, Offrey. Was the Prog POW mentioned on there if we were to do it, or is that just kind of being discussed now?
What I'm doing is proposing how to manage protocol upgrades on the mainnet. I'm not suggesting that we force ourselves to fit the schedule. I mean, I would recommend that we stick to a plan in general, but if the group of core developer decides we want to have an additional hard fork in between, then why not? I mean, but that's not relevant for my agenda item right now. So if we want to move to Prog POW first, let's just talk about Prog POW now.
Yeah, let's do Prog POW first, and then we'll go back to the proposed rough timeline for Istanbul and some of the other EEPs and stuff that you've been working on for the formal process for hard forks. So we have Miss If and Mr. Else from the Prog POW team. Thanks for coming back, you all. And they can, along with Martin and a few others, probably give some updates on Prog POW. Or actually, Miss If, do y'all have any particular updates for the specification that hasn't already been, covered by any of the devs here?
So this is Mr. Else.
No, we consider the changes in the Reddit to be. Go ahead, Mr. Else.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the changes that we published in early December, there were two small changes, one late November and one early December to the first one made it a little bit harder for specialized ASIC to be made. The second one stabilized hash rates. Those are the only two small changes we've had. We don't see any changes going forward from there.
Okay, now let's talk about implementation of the Gangnam testnet. First, just a quick overview. Is my understanding correct that the Gangnam testnet is just a testnet running client implementations of Prog POW?
Yes. It started off with ETH and then switched to Prog POW after 3,000 blocks.
Cool. And how's that going? I think Martin, you posted something about it the other day in chat. What's the latest on all that?
Yeah, it's past. Actually, I haven't kept track of it, but it had some problems during the first epoch transition, where one of the miners fell off. And and that's I'm not sure about the specifics of what error it was. It's been fixed, I've heard. Does anyone know more details about that?
The original miner, the original GPU miner had a bug that when you transitioned epochs, it would crash. It was just a CUDA programming bug. That's been fixed. And so we're up to 150,000 blocks now. So I've done multiple epoch transitions with no problems.
So that's 5 epochs. And we kind of, from the outset, we knew that the things that we needed to test are basically the epoch transitions, because yeah, those are the parts where you can trip and fall. And from my perspective, yeah, that's basically the big thing that needs to be testing. And regarding this, should we bundle it with other updates? That's my take, is that the transition from Hashimoto to ProgPow does not involve the EVM or state transition mechanics at all. It's only the envelope of the blocks. And the current test, the extensive test that we need to write to do the normal hard forks, we don't have to do those tests. There are other kinds of tests, and they mainly the main thing to test is, can we switch to a new DAG at a certain epoch? Does it work or not? And then, of course, if clients can verify it, but they're pretty straightforward tests. And that's why I believe there's no real point in bundling it with other EVM updates. And yeah.
Okay, great. So I guess what we want to decide today is not necessarily when it would happen, but if it would happen. And then we can start to kind of formulate what that entails if we decide it's going to happen. I haven't heard much dissent as far as people saying they don't want it to happen. Very, very few, just a couple of people actually. So, what are some opinions on whether or not this should go forward? Is there anyone who doesn't want this to go forward, or Martin?
No, I just thought I'd lay out some, opinions and facts about why I want it.
Yeah, great.
So for some facts, we know for a fact that there exists ASIC miners. So it's obviously profitable to manufacture and or buy and use ASIC miners. There is the E3, as I understand it, is first generation ASIC miners, but there are also second generation ASIC miners. One from Bitmain, which I'm not sure if it's even publicly released yet. And there's also some other companies produce an ASIC miner for Ethereum. There's also a fact that there are FPGA-based GPU accelerators. Minority sells them, which evidently you can make a profit if you put them on your GPU and they can accelerate. And we believe that ProgPow is more ASIC resistant and also more resistant to those kinds of accelerators for the GPUs. And yeah, there is grounds to believe that switching to ProgPow would postpone postpone the ASIC level of ASICs in our network for at least a year, probably a lot more than that. So we know today that ETH Hashimoto has flaws which are actively being targeted. And that's why I would like to switch as soon as possible to give us more time to move to proof of stake.
Okay, do we have other opinions?
Well, I just wanted to remember, Martin, you also said in the previous call or something that the other side of this, of course, is that if such time comes, we say we would postpone it for 1 year. But after that year, because the ProgPow is a bit more sophisticated than ETH Hash, then obviously making ISIC is much more difficult. But if somebody does manage to make it, then they will have a very good advantage. And so that is kind of on the other side of the coin. So is that still your do you still believe that?
I still believe that, and I still believe that if about a year after we switch to ProgPow and we hear new rumors about ASICs being manufactured and some central really large player has a monopoly of the Ethereum ASICs, then yes, we should probably consider switching to something which is trivial to implement in hardware.
So I would interject a bit that the Ethereum ASICs that exist today are only marginally better perf per watt than commodity GPUs. And the way that ProgPow has been designed, yes, of course, somebody can always make a ASIC. A GPU is an ASIC, but the amount of benefit they'll be able to get is vastly reduced. So even after a year, if they spent millions of dollars designing an ASIC, it might only be 10% faster, maybe 20% more efficient. It's such a small difference that it'll be effectively the difference between one generation and the next of an AMD GPU or an NVIDIA GPU. It's not going to be the way that we've seen with other ASICs or with the Ethash ASICs, where you can get a 2x benefit.
Right. And if that's the case, then it might not be worth switching again. But in the event that that is not the case, then yeah, I would probably prefer switching to something which anyone can implement.
Mr. Els, you said that the ASICs currently are marginally better. Like how marginally? Because doesn't this defeat the purpose of the switch if they are marginally better?
So an Ethash ASIC can be about 2x better. The ones that are on the market right now that use DDR4 are only a little bit better. They're not much better than a GPU. We know that DDR6 based Ethash ASICs are coming soon, and those will be about 2x better than any existing GPU.
Okay, so that's what you mean by marginally. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So ProgPow takes that 2x down to 1.1x, 1.2x.
So it, at worst, will be in a slow motion arms race.
Exactly. And the GPU companies also won't be sitting still. So the state of the art for what a commodity consumer can buy off the shelf will be in a slow motion arms race with what the mining ASIC manufacturers are making.
So I'm not generally opposed to this change. My main kind of what I would like to find out before we make a decision is that whether we underestimated the actual effort to switch on it, because we know that there's algorithm that we know we can do verification, but essentially what are the things we need to do, and is there any other catches that we haven't looked at, like certain elements of the infrastructure ecosystem, like light clients or whatever, the mining protocols, or anything which we haven't even looked at, and then we kind of assume that it's going to be done very quickly, but might be not. So do we have any blind spots? Should we look at any blind spots that we might have missed?
Yeah, it sounds like that's a good idea. Oh, go ahead, Martin.
No, I was going to say that that was one of the reasons to spin up the testnet, to see that we could get more clients on board. We could do CPU mining, we could do GPU mining, we can have fast syncing. I don't know if we have any light clients on it, but light client verification is the same as normal verification.
Okay, so the testnet
I think the testnet also has a pool that runs it, and whatever protocol the pool is using.
And they've already upgraded. They've already upgraded these things. Like, what is it? The protocol that they call using? I forgot.
Don't you have Andrea LaFranca on the call? Who works on ETH software? Andrea Lanfranchi.
Oh, you said Andrea?
Yeah.
I believe he is on here, or she's on, or someone's on here. Are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful.
Well, actually, I worked a lot to integrate ProcPow logic into Fminer. So the normal Ethash and ProcPow can live together. Actually, they share the same DAG memory area, which is generated by the classic Ethash kernel. And things are going pretty well. Miner is working, the testnet is working, but actually it's a too small testnet. We have a few nodes, the hashing power is very low. There are not particular problems. I want just to add a few notes about the addition of ProcPow. Well, what does it mean for miners? While it's pretty easy for AMD users to switch to the new algorithm, it's a little bit trickier for NVIDIA users because the runtime compilation of the kernels requires that the NVIDIA toolkit is installed on board. So this means a little more space needed on rigs which are driven by USB sticks or whatever, and a little bit more of computing power just for the needs of the compiler to switch very rapidly on ProcPow periods changes.
Andre, I'll chat with you offline. You don't actually need the full toolkit to do the CUDA compilation.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to reduce at the most the elements of the toolkit needed for the compilation, but I will gladly chat with you to get the smaller size possible. Actually, all the implementations have a little hole that is during the ProcPow period switches, all the miners stay silent for say half a second at least for the time needed to compile the kernel. I think we can easily implement an async pre-compilation of the kernels, so we can give continuity to the mining activity on the devices. And one last thing, I think it might be related, even if it's not directly related to Ethereum itself. I think is the adoption of the Ethereum Stratum 2.0 for to communicate among miners and pools would help reduce significantly the bandwidth used to signal all the works, and might also, if needed in the future, integrate the revisions of the programmable protocol. So if it will ever happen that we start with a revision of ProcPow, which is actually the 0.9.2 to get to 1.0, we can easily implement the switches without changing the structure of the miner itself. That's my notes about the matter.
So did you mean, when you're talking about those silent half a second, was that during period or epoch change?
During a period change, epoch change actually cannot be prefetched unless you have a lot of very consistent space on the GPU, which is actually possible for 6 gigabyte GPUs. And but it's half a second in period changes.
So 50 blocks.
Every 50 blocks, yeah. But as I said, it's quite trivial the kernel, the new kernel, while the old ones are still running on the GPU, because at least for NVIDIA, the compilation, as far as I understand, is a completely host process. It's not on the GPU.
And sorry, Andrea, did you say that the Stratum is already supporting this this new algorithm?
The new Ethereum 2.0 Stratum proposal, yes, does support it. Actually is not effectively in use, even if I worked with Peter Pratcher, which have implemented it for their pool, and we have a couple of test endpoints which are working very well. Just yesterday, with a collaborator of Peter, we have tested an Ethereum Stratum 2.0 in bundle with ProcPow, which is working quite fine.
Okay. I mean, so my question to basically everybody is that how much work do we have left for the core developers? How much work do we have for the mining pools? Like, if there's not much left work to be done by core developers, then I'm pretty happy to just sort of like wait till all other people just finish their work and then tell us when they're ready. Of course, they might need to have some certainty whether this change is going through, but we can at least sort of gauge how much of our involvement is actually left in the process. What do you think?
Well, you ask me.
Not just you, but everybody. So my main question is that because this is the core dev calls, is that how much more time and efforts of the core developers need to be spent on this change? And like, is it minimal? Is it like medium? Is it large? Because I'm pretty happy if the rest of the work is proceeding somewhere else, and then we can just make decision on that basis.
Well,
I'll go ahead.
Sorry, Hudson. I can give you my personal opinion about that. The work on the mining side is pretty much done. What we are lacking now is a serious test. Actually, the Gangnam network is mining a bunch of empty blocks. We have no transactions. I don't have a clear idea, which is the impact of a slightly longer live verification of the transactions. What is working now is a test net which is doing basically nothing. It's only producing a bunch of empty blocks. It works. The stop it happened, it was only due to the fact that there was practically only a miner keeping the chain running. We have a very low hash rate. At this very moment, there are less than 40 mega hashes, and my test rig alone is producing 36. So actually, no one is participating actively in the testing of the network. There are no transactions, and I do not have a clear idea of what might be the impact for large pools to implement all the stack needed for ProcPow. I can tell on the Ethminer side that 95% of the work has been done. It's working, and we need only to go through the optimization phase if there are any optimizations left to be done. For the rest, the protocol is here. Peter is providing a very useful and valuable support to integrate ProcPow in the mining pools. Maybe an extensive test on a real crowded chain is needed before we take any decision about the schedule of the adoption.
Well, since I mean the only such testnet we have is basically Ropsten. So that would mean we would switch Ropsten to ProgPow and then decide if we are going with ProgPow, which is a little bit not how we usually do it.
Well, one thing that we can do is to create a shadow fork of Ropsten. Basically, just launch a few nodes that switch over to ProgPow and have the two chains coexist. And everybody can still use the original Ropsten. The original Ropsten will still have the exact same transactions, but we'll just piggyback on it and try
You
to.
mean just you replay the transaction across chains?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, eventually it will diverge, but for some time it will work. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it,
No,
of course, it won't function properly forever, but still. I mean, it would be so if our only goal is to test how things perform on a used chain, then I think it would be more or less useful. Maybe 10% of the transactions will fail, but who cares?
And the thing we're trying to decide today is more, do we want to go forward with ProgPow and not develop a timeline quite yet? But I do understand, Alexei, that your concern is the amount of effort involved across teams, and if that amount of effort is going to be longer than the effects of, putting it in the first place, or what it's trying to prevent.
No, it's my basically like I just want to understand what is the, so if some of the work has already been done from the core developer side, like how much more do we need to do, or not?
Yeah, I can try answering this. So firstly, I would suggest to do I try to answer like what's for the clients, developers, what is the work left. So I would suggest to do small change to RPC endpoint. I think it's called get work, to also include mining algorithm there. It's rather trivial. We recently added block number to the response, and so because this is kind of the connection between mining pools and so on. I'm not sure like every mining pool is using that. Maybe they have modified clients, but anyway, this is kind of the connection point. And the second bigger part would be considering block verification. So what clients need to implement ProgPow block proof of work verification. Because
but isn't it already implemented in a couple of the clients?
Yes, we have 3 implementations, right? It's C++, Rust, and Go. So this can be exposed as a library and whatever, but if you want like pure Python and something like that, it's not done, and so this is what you could considering as a something we want to have, or like it's optional. And I also propose to add other language bindings to my library. I promised to do C# some time ago. It's not going very well because I have some problems with figuring out how to do it exactly, but it's doable if that's acceptable solution. So I can expose Python and maybe take JavaScript and something like that. Maybe JavaScript would be more problematic because it might be useful to have JavaScript only implementation to be able to be run in browsers. But I'm not sure if we have if hash implementation of that anyway. So, but that I think that's the biggest and like something this we can considering not to be mandatory to have for every implementation we currently considering as a Ethereum client.
Okay, so what you're saying is that there's some work left for the kind of non-major clients to do in terms of the verification.
Yes, and like at least we should like having that into consideration, right? either support their teams on like figure out approach to it. These like probably all the teams should somehow respond to that and say what do they need, what they think should be their way of implementing block verification, and then we can suggest some solutions or work on on some common solutions to that. There's multiple approaches to it, but it's I think at this point it's some kind of open question. So maybe that, well, we could collect some answers during next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and we can make, I mean, I guess if the major clients, if it's possible for the major clients to code that in, I mean, sorry, the non-major clients to code it between now and the time that we would potentially launch it, which would be, what is theoretically the soonest that we would want to do this? Has anyone kind of thought about that? Martin, I thought you might have been throwing around numbers, but that might have been someone else for like 3 or 5 months.
Yeah, I don't know if I threw around any numbers, but I would prefer it to be, I don't know, in this quarter, or maybe late this quarter, early next quarter.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that sounds like 2 to 3 months, or well, really 3 to 4 at most if it's this quarter. So let's actually, I have a question for Dimitri from the Harmony team. Have you all looked at integrating ProgPow, and or can you estimate or give us an idea of the amount of work to be done? Because that would also help us understand where Pantheon might be at, and I can also ask the Pantheon team as well.
I'm not sure, but I think it should take like 2-3 weeks.
Okay.
From the first view.
Pantheon, what about you all? Do you have any idea?
We haven't started implementing ProgPow or really looked at it a whole lot. I've looked over it briefly. It doesn't seem like a massive amount of work, but again, we haven't invested much time in it yet.
Okay, thank you. I guess I can talk to the other ones, or the other clients too. Nimbus, have you all looked at this? Oh, I think you're still muted.
Sorry, is it better now?
Yep, it's on now.
All right, cool. No, we haven't really looked at this. We're not that far.
Okay, no problem.
And just a quick question, are there any test suites that we would be able to run against as we implement?
Yes. So there are, there are test cases for everything from smaller functions, the math and the random stuff, up to full blocks. And yeah, obviously the testnet as well.
Do these test suites include the epoch transitions that we saw issues with that GPU miner?
Yes. So there are tests that block 1, block 29,999, and block 30,000, and block 30,001, block 59,000, etc. So you get the epoch transitions as well.
There are also difficulty tests designed specifically for difficulty formula check. So it's basically just file describing what was the previous block number, what is the next block number. So I think we could extend that test to also check.
The algorithm doesn't change. The formula for calculating what difficulty is required from a block doesn't change.
Yeah, so I think we could extend those tests to check also the proof of work somehow. I mean, in the same format, we could generate a lot of cases for proof of work if you really need it.
Okay, so Alexei, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, and I have a suggestion. I think so. It looks to me that we want to hear back from the non-major client. but at the same time, we kind of we don't want to procrastinate too much and just leave the decision hanging in the air. So I would say that we might just do we might decide kind of the conditional decision kind of thing. This might decide to go ahead unless we, you know, there's like some major problem found with a non-major client or something like that. I don't know, because it seems to me that there is no big reason why not, you know, why don't we just go ahead and give people some certainty about why they, because I guess the mining pools and other people will just need to just go ahead to start working on their stuff, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be good if we didn't procrastinate anymore. I think you have it right. You hit the nail right on the head. Is there other technical questions about ProgPow that we can ask Misif or Mr. Else while they're on here?
I have one concern, or one thing that we've learned from ETH, which is that the verification time for ETH on mobile devices is too long. So that sort of causes us to have to resort to other solutions less satisfactory. So one thing that I'd be looking at is like when evaluating ProgPow later would be whether we can actually verify blocks on devices which are not as powerful as a computer, right? So calculating a normal hash is fine, but calculating an ETH hash of a block really takes too much time to be useful.
So ProgPow is very much based on Ethash. It adds a little bit more math in the main loop and doubles the amount of memory that's consumed from the DAG. So if Ethash is too slow, ProgPow will also definitely be too slow.
I think last time I saw benchmarks comparing the verification, I think the best numbers were that ProgPow is about twice as slow. So nothing too insane, but not pleasant either.
I saw some that I thought were about 1.5x, depending on some variables and compilation. But yes, in the range of 1.5 to 2x.
And Jacek, what are the other techniques that you need to use to kind of go around this problem? Is this technique going to work? Do this technique work? Would they work on a ProgPow or not?
Basically, it means going over to different trust models.
Oh, okay.
You know, ultralight clients with some sort of staking or whatever, like VIP node, those kind of solutions, which are like on a powerful device like an iPhone, you get away with it, but on say emerging market typical devices, not at all.
And then what you need to verify, essentially, you verify the hash chain from the beginning, right? From the
Well, let's say something like a light sync, right? You need to verify, even to just keep up with blocks. It becomes
okay. Just keep verifying the blocks. Okay.
But Jacek, in your model, would you like to verify each and every block, or can you do opportunistic block verification once in a while?
You could consider opportunistic verification. We haven't really delved that far into it. And the one thing I know is that verifying every block was simply too slow, too heavy, and too draining on the battery and a bunch of other things. I guess you could explore models where you verify blocks when you're about to create transactions. The point is more that it's sufficiently computationally intense compared to, say, SHA verification that it prevents normal operation, so to speak, the kind of operation that you see in Geth. And if ETH hash adds to that, well, obviously we have to look at these alternative models.
This is actually quite interesting because since we're changing the proof of work algorithm, it's not only like the burden, but it's also an opportunity, because if there isn't a solution to that which we can incorporate, so we basically will not simply make it slower, but we might actually solve this problem somehow. It's a kind of the craziest thought, but for example, can we like sort of do the double proof of work? Like you could put the like ProgPow plus SHA-3, or in both of them have to be valid, and then the light clients can simply check one of them. Does it work? Does it work?
That's actually an idea that I thought about exploring, but I haven't really looked at the logic of how that would fit together. But basically, if you could include an extra hash that allows, works kind of like a signature or something, then.
Well, what I'm thinking is that you basically need to provide two proofs of work. One is based on ProgPow, and another one based on, let's say, SHA-2 or SHA-3, whatever, and which is much lower difficulty, but still it will be kind of hard to produce. Not as hard as both proof of works, but still hard.
So ETH actually has that built in today, and ProgPow retains that. Where the way ETH works is there's a keccak of the header and the nonce, then the ETH loop runs, or ProgPow loop runs, and then there's a keccak of the result. So a light client could just check the keccaks and verify those. Some clients use those for denial of service checks, that you can check the keccak. If that's wrong, then you don't bother calculating the ETH hash. So a light client could decide to just check the keccak and not the proof of work, not interact with the DAG at all. It's not a good verification, but it's better than nothing.
Could it be somehow strengthened, or like?
Well, it's secure hash function, so I don't think it's something trivial that you can replace that with something else. If you don't want to reach for memory, that's you can replace that with other hash function, but it doesn't change the scheme of it.
That's an interesting observation. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So, not to get too much in the weeds, it sounds like what we've come to is that we are going to tentatively go ahead with ProgPow, and by tentatively, what we mean is we're going ahead with it unless there's a major problem found within the testing or things of that nature. Is anyone feeling like that's not the case, or there's different feelings? Okay, great. Then we will be going forward with ProgPow.
And just one more comment. Sorry, Hudson.
Yeah, sure.
Just so I think we have to make it clear and kind of documented that we're not gonna include any more changes into this hard fork, because otherwise it will increase the complexity quite a lot.
Yes, I think that's a good move. Does anyone have any comments on that statement, that we would not be including any more changes into a ProgPow hard fork that would happen before a 9-month Istanbul hard fork?
No, but I think that we should not go down the rabbit hole whenever anything comes up to try to squeeze it in. I totally agree with Alexei here.
Great. Do we have any other comments on this?
Yeah, maybe one small comment. I would like. Yeah, I'm that guy again. Let's not rush it. I mean, when we are ready, let's fork. But I personally think 2 to 3 months is very ambitious, especially if you have to consider that we need at least 6 weeks between all client releases and people having time to upgrade it. Then we maybe need to testnet hard fork. I think 2 months is impossible, and 3 months is ambitious.
I think now what we can do now is that we're not going to decide at the time frame, but we sort of decide that we are going to go, and then we request the comments from all the people that still need to do work on this about how long is this going to take, and then just based on that information we can decide, because we do want everybody to be sufficiently prepared, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a logical next step. Martin?
But if we today have agreed that we're going with ProgPow, with some caveats, then let's people do some homework until the next Court of Call and see if and how they can implement this in their frameworks, and maybe we can talk about timing in 2 weeks. Does that sound feasible?
Yeah, that sounds good. We can collect data between now and then. Okay, do we have any other comments?
This speaks to the general issue of whether we want to do this rigid corporate thing of rigid scheduling, or do the continuous integration of when we get a decent set of features that need to get out, we get them out.
Oh, Greg, I think you cut off.
I'm still here.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that was just the end of your sentence. Okay, yeah, I agree. I think that's something we need to look at over time. Is the Magician's Forum a good place to discuss that, do you think, or is there a better place?
No, it's a core dev issue.
Oh, I meant like the forum, so just discuss it in the calls, or do you have a suggestion on where to discuss it, I should say?
On the core dev channel together.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
To some extent here and now, because the Prague POW is already a case of, we have a 9-month one, but we're going to break the rule for this important feature.
I see. We only have a few minutes, so we can't do it today, but I agree that's something we need to come up with, yeah.
Put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Thanks, Greg. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to make sure Offrey got some time in. So thank you, Miss If and Mr. Else, for attending and answering some of these questions. I look forward to further collaboration between you and the other core dev teams as we try to implement this. Okay, let's see. Offrey, if you wanted to go back and just do a quick summary of kind of what you've been working on as far as hard fork coordination and what you were discussing earlier.
Yeah, sure. So I was proposing to have a fixed schedule for protocol upgrades and basically releasing all accepted proposals as is on a fixed schedule. And yeah, now I'm requesting comments.
And should those comments be in the Gitter channel? Is there an EEP that you have that people can comment on, or what's the best avenue for that?
No, there's no EEP and no EIP, but this would be a outcome of discussing this. I just want to have we have only 5 minutes left, but I just want to have any comments here from the core developers if this is actually desired, or if we want to go another path, because based on this decision, I will continue my work on maybe specifying some documents like that.
Yeah, I'll go. I think it's great if we can have scheduled hard forks with a longer term view as to what kind of protocol updates we want to do and when. And it's about time we actually start rolling with that model. I mean, we discussed it in Mexico. It was quite a while ago.
Oh yeah, good times. Anybody else have comments?
I support the general idea of a regularized hard forks, and also I think is better than just regular hard forks is the rigor we're putting into the milestones, such as making sure releases are 6 weeks before any hard fork would happen, having a time frame before that 6 weeks for minor clients and other people to come in and commit, not commit. Just the milestones of what we need to make sure that we have our ducks in a row before we basically reboot the network. So those are the things that I find most exciting about a regular hard fork, and regular times give us forcing functions to make sure that we're doing these things at a particular time and on a particular schedule.
Yeah, just adding my voice of support as well. I support this. I think, in particular, having a regular testing schedule, right? Making sure we get ample testing in and no changes are landing, kind of just before any sort of mainnet hard fork happens. I think this is a great idea and a great step towards more maturity project management.
Any other comments?
Yeah, so from my perspective, at least for the Geth team, doing regular releases, scheduled releases worked out really nice. A lot better than trying to cram in features and then eventually do big major releases. So I think it's from a community perspective too, it's much better to be deterministic rather than having to wait half a year and wonder whether bit shifting will arrive or not. So I'm all for regular releases.
Okay. Anybody else?
Me again. One thing we might want to add in light of ProgPow is maybe some sort of consideration for earlier than scheduled forks, such things as limiting the scope and the time frame for those. I think those would be valuable to add into the process.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, sure. I don't think it's an issue to have unique forks if need be, or to roll out certain upgrades if need be. I think it's more about the general releasing of new features.
Yeah, so what happened is Constantinople took like 1.5 years. I don't have the exact figure now, but having like a strictly defined schedule for hard forks tries to achieve this goal to have these upgrades deployed regularly to mainnet. It does not oppose having other hard forks like ProgPow, if it makes sense,
Okay. Any other comments? I think we're actually over time, so any last comment? All right, thanks so much for putting that together, Offrey. Sounds like we're making good progress there, and we're looking forward to what we talk about more in the next meeting. Thanks everybody for attending. Made some great progress today, and I'll try to post the next agenda soon so we can add items to it. And I'll be posting that in the Core Dev Skitter chat. Again, send me an email if you're interested in the January in-person meeting in San Francisco. And everybody have a great day or night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Great job.
Bye-bye, all.
Bye.
Thank you all.